So I want to start out by just, giving us a chance to focus on the good things in life right now, which is pretty important. What, for you, are three things that you enjoy about being a regional minister, Tony?
I, the first thing is I enjoy just the engagement with people in congregations. I love just the thing, and the thing that I'm missing right now is being in congregations with people. And especially if I can be in a church on potluck Sunday, which is kind of a random thing. I never know when that's going to happen, but unless I've got to drive several hours to be someplace else, I almost never decline the invitation to stay. I enjoy preaching regularly in congregations. I don't do it as much as I'd like. But I have done quite a bit of preaching in June and July and August as pastors who have been working so incredibly hard in this COVID shelter-in-place period, who have had to learn how to use, perhaps use technology that was recreational in terms of Zoom and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and now that's become their place of worship and their means of communicating with people. And it's a different energy that takes an incredible amount of work. So I'm really glad that people are taking time off. And the third thing I enjoy about regional ministry is just the ability to dream with people and to talk with people about what they believe as they pray and as they discern is possible for this region.
Yeah, well, it really sounds like you love your job. I mean, your calling anyway, it's such a great fit for you. And I'd hardly know anybody who more authentically loves the church than you.
Thank you.
Well, I've seen that throughout your life and all. And you've taught me a lot about that. And I have to say that just we've been connected with different movements and organizations in the disciples over the years, more so you, a lot more. But I know I remember learning a lot from you about the national convocation of the disciples. And I think many urban sanctuary members and many disciple members don't know much about the convocation. So can you tell them a little bit about it? And I just wonder what your thoughts are. I just think we have incredibly strong Black leadership in the disciples at this moment in time, and more so than many other denominations. Do you think convocation, that presence of convocation throughout our history, has contributed to that?
It absolutely has. The National Convocation, whose official name is the Biennial Session, actually, nobody calls it that, that meets every 2 years and should have met this summer, should have met a couple of weeks ago, along with our two other ethnic constituencies, Obra Hispania and the North American Pacific Asian disciples. We're all going to meet together this year in Fort Worth, Texas. And due to COVID, that meeting didn't happen. The National Convocation and its predecessor bodies began in 1917. So for more than 100 years, there's been this leadership working with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, that has been the advocate for African American disciples in three primary areas. In terms of work with women, and there's a long history and legacy of women, African American women advocating for other African American women and women in general in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, working in terms of education. And there's, again, a legacy of education and special courses and encouraging people to go to college and go to seminary and to find other ways to continue to be learned people, and evangelism. And so part of the legacy of that in the old Division of Homeland Ministries, now Disciples Home Missions, is that there will always be an African American person who works with women. There'll always be an African American person who works in education. There'll always be an African American person who works in evangelism. And that is by both design and by written agreement. And so it's been there, Convocation's been there to nurture now several generations of leaders. I find myself now as one of the elders in that leadership, which I take on. I'm really pleased about that because it means, A, I've stayed around long enough, but it also means that I've got a little bit of wisdom and some things to share with that group of people. And let me say, while its focus is on African American leadership, its mission is to serve the entire church.
It's so amazing to see that come to fruition and how important that space was for nurturing that leadership when as we're learning, you know, white supremacy and the dominance of that in all aspects of our culture and our congregations in so many ways, doesn't always make room for that. And so I just want to say thank you for, you know, educating us a little bit about what that experience has been like for you and colleagues as well. So related to that too, in another arena, you and I became friends working in GLAD, gay, lesbian, affirming disciples, back in a time where many regions would not ordain openly LGBT people. And now a lot of the people who were in GLAD who were worried about whether they could even get ordained after going to seminary are leaders in the disciples. Alan Harris and you, we were all together in that group then. Our regional ministers now, and Mark Anderson, who was in that group back then, is now president of NBA. And so can you give us a sense of how this part of who you are has weathered all the storms in the church around this to get where you are today, living openly with your beloved partner, Leslie, who's a UCC minister?
I think part of it is timing. You know, everybody's different. And so there are people who are out and, you know, loud and proud, as people like to say, from the very beginning. And I think for others of us, it was a longer journey. You know, there's always a friend of mine said, you know, there used to be this question at these gatherings, kind of, how out are you? And one of my friends said, with the church and some family members, not at all. With a small group of friends, out loud and proud. And I think that's how it's been for me. I just kind of, you know, people know or don't know. I rarely make any declaration about those things. But I think it was important. And so people that were good friends, people that I could trust, knew. Because the issue being a Black woman, being a lesbian, all that stuff, all those things are still not very highly valued. My primary value was always that I wanted to be somebody who helped lead this church. And if I had to not suppress myself, I've always known who I was. But if that meant not sharing all of who I was, then I was willing to do that. But when it came to this particular ministry, I made the decision that I knew this was going to be the last ministry position I would have before I retired. I made the decision that if I wanted to challenge this region to be open and honest and risk-taking, then I had to be open and honest and risk-taking. So just talked about being partnered from the first interview. But what that has done is kind of freed me from being overly cautious. Because I think when we're overly cautious, we can't always get done what we want to do. And so everybody knows Leslie, who's now serving a disciples congregation here in the region. She's a wonderful pastor and a wonderful person and partner. And, you know, my life and the life of this church is enhanced because she's here. But part of what I hope what I can do, and what Mark does and what Alan does, is to say, this is part of what the ministry of Jesus Christ looks like.
Yeah, it's been an evolution for all of us. I know.
It has been. It has been. Yeah.
And that sense of, and there's not much privacy in ministry for
No, there's
sometimes it's not just a matter of being out. Sometimes there's just parts of your life you deserve a certain amount of privacy.
Well, I'm a fairly high introvert, and so I was telling Leslie the other day, my installation here, which was wonderful, it was a marvelous service. That was way more attention than I wanted on me, and it was necessary, and I get that, and so sometimes you just got to take a deep breath and get through it and enjoy the moment.
You and I used to make a game of, because we kind of grew up in the church, sort of people who sort of ate, drank, and slept Bible and church 3 times a week. Things like, so we used to play these little games where we would quiz each other around hymn tunes or Bible verses, where we could see if we could catch each other. So would you humor me with a little round of one of those games?
I will.
So I want to invite you to think of a passage of scripture, and I will think of one too, and just quote it, and then the other one has to say what book of the Bible is that in. And so moderation in all things. All right? Doesn't have to be obscure, and it doesn't have to be on a billboard.
Okay.
So
I've got 5.
you got yours? Okay, go.
I've got mine.
Throw it at me.
2 of these will be, I'll be embarrassed for you if you can't get them. God has shown you, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God?
Oh my goodness! Did you know those are hanging on the banners in our church, in our sanctuary?
I did.
Oh, so you made it easy for me, Micah, the prophet Micah.
Okay.
All right, ding, ding, ding. All right. Let's see. In a particular book, there's these 2 guys, Barnabas and Paul, and they have a disagreement about a particular disciple they have mentored and all, and they go their separate ways. What book of the Bible is that in?
I believe that is in Acts.
Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. All right. All right. And for those of you who are listening in, we used to go on and on, much to actually our friends' dismay. I think they did not get why Tony and I really like to do this so much. So anyway, those were fun times. So just in wrapping up, Tony, I'm asking every one of the people I interview, in these times in which there's just a lot of turmoil and uncertainty. What do you have a poem, a prayer, a song, a practice that is centering and grounding you these days?
I have a snippet of a poem that comes to me quite a bit, and that is Maya Angelou's poem on the pulse of mourning that she did for Bill Clinton's first presidential inauguration. And there's just this line in it that speaks to our age and our need to reflect. And it is, history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. I think that is powerful. It's very rare that something I heard in passing, all those years ago is still in my mind. I have more favorite hymns than I can name, but I think for personal reflection, Holy Spirit of God, descend upon my heart. Fanny J. Crosby's hymn, Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior. And lately I've been thinking of a gospel song called My Soul is Anchored in the Lord, and just talks about that need, no matter what's happening in our lives, to remember that God is present with us.
thank you for taking this time with us. And
Thank you.
given what I heard from you in the beginning, we're going to have you back to preach.
Okay,
And,
great.
and I put this down. When we can have potlucks again, right away, we're going to get you down here for a potluck.
Okay, yay, good.
All right. So then
I've
we
had
can
some
get
good meals at your church, so I look forward to that. So.
we can get a couple of your favorite things about regional ministry and in one day.
Okay, excellent.
All right.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
Tony, great to be with you.
Thank you,
Blessings,
Dana.
and our prayers are with you in your ministry.